Every format has a villain, and right now, Standard has a big one. Is Vivi Cauldron going to complete its hostile takeover, or will a hero rise from the ashes and create balance once again?
It's only void if it's destroyed. Comment below with your favorite deck as we get into Week 3 of Edge of Eternities Standard. Welcome back, dear viewer. Today I'm joined by the one and only Figured Base as we look at last week's results. 12 tournaments made the cut with 96 top 8 spots available, and of those, Izzet Cauldron took down 8 tournaments and claimed 36 top 8 spots of its own. Thus, Cauldron claims a solid third of all trophies available and 37.5% of all top 8 spots available this week. This is a downtick from last week by nearly 17% in terms of trophies and 12.5% in terms of meta share for top 8s, but don't let the numbers fool you. Cauldron is king for another week, and it's not particularly close, B.
Dimir continues chipping away at the lead with an impressive 20 top 8s this week to go along with only one trophy. Last week, Dimir claimed a 13.3% meta share of the top 8 and 11.1% of all trophies. But this week, we're up to 21% of all top 8 slots. Though, admittedly, our trophy share is down to 8.3%. Solid for a second place contender trying to make the run to first, and no definitive movement yet.
Third place goes to Azorius Control for another week, rocking out 8 top 8 spots in a trophy of its own. The meta share of top 8s is increasing week over week from 7.7% last week to 8.3% this week, but the number of trophies heavily declined from 16.67% to 8.3%. So we're seeing this archetype struggle to find its footing as other competitors make adjustments for it being on the tier list, but there is still plenty of room to evolve.
Rounding out Tier 1 is Mono Red Aggro, replacing Esper Pixies, which fell off a cliff, and claiming 7 top 8 spots, though no trophies this week. Nonetheless, this represents doubling the meta share in the top 8 from 3.5% to 7.3%. Look out, world, the Dragon Tribe has arrived.
We kick off Tier 2 with Gruul Landfall rising from its Week 1 grave as it claims 3 top 8s and a trophy this week. The bird is the word, and we are here for the latest World Souls Rage deck now that the archetype has evolved with a red splash.
6th place goes to Yuna Omni, a splashy new brew that's newly emerged just this week with 2 top 8s and a trophy. We can't wait to show you, so stay tuned.
Golgari Midrange comes out of retirement this week as our 7th place finisher with 4 top 8s, though again, no trophies.
And rounding out our tier list is Jeskai Control, holding steady at the end with 3 top 8s and 0 trophies this week.
Over in Brewer's Corner, I'll be featuring Bant Birds and Sultai Tempo.
And I'll be highlighting 4-color control and Jund Roots. Now, let's kick off our archetype breakdown, starting with King Cauldron.
AD5C took down Monday's 69-player MTGO challenge with Izzet Cauldron, and the evolution continues for this archetype. Now, things you're going to want to note as you look at this. First and foremost, the mana base, we've shifted again. We were sitting at like 6-6-4-4, and all of a sudden we've decided we want starting towns and soulstone sanctuaries and thundering falls. So we've complicated the mana base to try to get a few more spell lands in the form of soulstone sanctuary here. We've also shifted out towards the tower from the main entirely, and there's only 1 copy left on the board. This is because we want to uptick that Abrade to the 3rd copy, and we're now playing 2 Spell Pierce in the main, which if you think about the fact that turn 1 on the draw, you need to be able to put down an island and have a card counter for Profts or Agathas in the mirror, this starts to make a lot more sense, right? These early interactive spells, they just continue to get adjusted because of the mirror match. Now, you also note Tursa, we're down to a copy, only 1. Steamcore is up to a full playset here, and we're not seeing Grease Wrench Goblins, we're not seeing Draconauts Engineer, we're not even seeing Quantum Riddlers in the main. It's a spicy one.
How much should we be preparing for the mirror, and what steps would you take to win those important game 1s?
I mean, I think a lot of the adjustments we're seeing here are exactly the kind of adjustments I would be making as well. Spell Pierce or Annul is huge in terms of a question right now. If I was going hard at the mirror, I would make it Annul every time, but Spell Pierce is going to have wider applicability to decks like Azorius Control and to decks like Dimir. So I can see why they didn't want to do the hard counter in the main. But the soft counter is still just as effective early in the game, right? So I think if you're going to see a deck that has somewhere between a third and half of the meta covered up, you need to be winning game one in that mirror match, right? So whatever it
Yeah.
takes to get that game 1B, that's where I would be right now, even if it means overboarding with a null. But I can see, again, the Spell Pierce is the compromise, saying we're not going to play just Cauldron, and perhaps we're going to play a certain amount of Dimir, a certain amount of Control. We can't just give up game one there either.
All right, let's go on to the next one. Introducing Dimir Tempo.
Somebody please tag Claudio, because they are on a tear with Dimir lately. Last Friday, they took down a 53-player MTGO challenge with Dimir Tempo smashing through Cauldron in the Finals B. And looking at the build here, I'm not surprised. I think they've correctly shown that Cecil, right now, 3 copies. It's where you need to be. And you know what? We don't need all the other weird 2-drops. Just play the Beastbinder right now. For those who are unaware of how this works with Soul Cauldron, what you're going to do is you're going to target that Soul Cauldron and turn it into a 2/2 when you attack with Azure Beastbinder. And you may not think it's that important, but it shuts off their ability to use the Vivi mana on their turn, because it doesn't turn back into a Soul Cauldron until your next turn. So that means that you get to shut off the engine, essentially. That's why that's so important. That 3 toughness, also critical right now. We need to force Braids out of their hands onto things like this. Skitter in the main means that they have a much tighter window as well in which to exile and make sure that they get what they want. And on that sideboard, there's also a Ren the Relentless, which is just spicy in terms of exiling everything.
And why is Azure Beastbinder so well positioned right now?
Well, if you look at the weakness that Dimir aggro tends to have, I think the biggest weakness I see is that people keep playing Fire Magic and killing all these X1 bodies, and they're getting a Wrath of God effect out of a 1-mana card, and that's, you just can't afford for that to happen, right? So the fact that you can get rid of the Fire Magic tension point by having a 1/3, that you get to have Vigilance, which makes it a little bit more difficult for some of these red decks, etc., to deal with you, and you get to take their best artifact or creature and go, nope, you're a 2/2. That's a pretty key factor right now in what we're trying to do.
Well, on to my personal villain. Let's go into Azorius Control.
God, Athena and I are still in love with this deck.
I
know. Ron Eldred won a 28-player RCQ in Wisconsin this past Saturday with Azorius Control, and there's a lot of nuance to this design, so let's go ahead and dive in. Now, we've shifted, right? When we started playing Azorius Control, everybody was on 4 stock up. You're starting to see stock up go a little bit by the wayside because we want instant speed interaction with the ability to kick it late game and see 8, 10, 13 cards. I've been playing a ton with this deck. My version of it, you're going to find the sideboard guide over in Coffee and Grinders, by the way. This is an extremely well-positioned deck right now. This is positioned to take down Cauldron, and if you know what you're doing, you actually have a decent game plan against Dimir. I don't believe this build is exactly primed for Dimir, but it's got a lot to offer here. The fact that you correctly, Ron, you correctly assumed that you need Pinnacle Starcage and Day of Judgment in a split 3/2, and also 3 steps ahead, those hard counters, critical right now. It's a very balanced build.
Absolutely, but why are we running 2 Disenchants instead of 2 Annuls?
So the question here is, do you want to be reactive or proactive, right? Because Disenchant does a good job of cleaning things up. Annul does a good job of preventing them, but they're essentially hitting the same targets. So the reason that I prefer Annul right here is because I have the same logic that you would have if you played against Beanstalk a lot. And disenchanting and up the Beanstalk never felt good because you were 2-for-1ing yourself by going that route. Similarly, disenchanting a Profts has the same effect, right? You've 2-for-1'd yourself, it doesn't feel good. Whereas if you annul it, they don't get to draw the card, you get ahead, and it's 1 mana cheaper. So personally, I'm on the annul plan, but I understand the point of disenchant if you feel like they're going to sneak something through the counter wall. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and this next one I've been a personal victim of in our testing. Let's deep dive into mono red aggro.
Number 1 noob made it to the semifinals of Saturday's 57-player MTGO challenge before falling to King Cauldron. I'm just going to go ahead and say it, folks. I covered some of this last week, and I straight up don't agree with most of the selections here. Go ahead and check out Coffee and Grinders for the updated version of this deck. Because Sunspine Lynx, I loved you when Esper Pixies was everywhere, but Esper Pixies fell off a cliff, like we said. Almost no top 8s this last week. I don't know why we want this main board against 2 color decks. Yeah, they're going to have about 12 lands that can hit, but they're also going to have about 12 basics, right? And that puts you in a scenario where you're bolting them with the Lynx, and then they're just going past it. That's not what you want. You want Lynx to hit as a Lava Axe for 5 minimum. right?
Yep.
Nova Hellkite, extremely well positioned against Dimir, kind of garbage against Cauldron right now. They can scale right past this with Steam Core, and they will. So I don't love this build because I think it's misattributing what you're trying to do with the deck, and you're trying to go for dragons instead of going for mice. But it's seeing a lot of people play it. We'll see how it goes as time goes on.
Rictus, I've noticed this deck has quite a few 3-drops. Do we want to tune this deck more towards aggro or mid-range?
I mean, personally, the way I'm tuning mine is for Cauldron and just Cauldron. I like straight up. You have to be Cauldron, yeah. Right? Yeah. The way that this is tuned is much more on the mid-range side. It's trying to be able to grind through Dimir. It's trying to be able to grind through some of the control decks. Like Nova Hellkite's great against control. But I think you give up margin points, and I don't think you can afford to give up those margin points right now when the most oppressive deck this format has seen in a while is sitting there with somewhere between 33 and 50% meta share. I don't think you can say, like, we'll coin flip with that and we'll get the rest. Like, you can't coin flip there. You need a 70-30 matchup or you're not making it to the top 8 of these tournaments anymore. But with that we're going to move on down. Tier 2, Gruul Landfall. Kick things off. Tell us all about it.
Now, Tenaguchi Hiroaki made it to the top of the Champions Cup Special Qualifier in Nippon Bashi, Japan, this past weekend as one of 38 players. What makes it special? Well, they got there with Landfall Birds, out of all things. The red here is only for World Souls Rage from what I can see, and of course, really important removal as we need for this VV Cauldron meta that's been taking over Standard. Being able to return a large number of lands with World Souls Rage to trigger landfall for your key engine pieces like Bristly Bill, Tifa, and Sauce's Chocobo is an insane finisher. I really love the tempo in this deck. You can go 1, 2, 3, and then just end the game. But I feel like it could be not as resilient towards counter magic and the control decks that we've seen on the rise lately that is impacting due to being impacted by all the VV Cauldrons running around. Now, like I was saying, with the format evolving constantly to beat whatever the newest iteration of Cauldron is, there will be points where the primary game plan for Landfall is well suited for that meta.
Going into that a little bit more here, like we said, this deck was tried heavily in week 1. I think all of us were on the ladder watching everybody try to win with Tifa on turn 3 or 4, and we all kind of endured it week 1. It disappeared completely in week 2. It's back in week 3. Is this deck an actual contender, or is it just another flash in the pan to you?
It really depends on what our Rebels expect to see at their local RCQs. Like I was saying, with the format trying to beat BB, I could see this deck being a menace against experimental decks that haven't found their fitting yet.
That's fair. That's fair. And with that, we're going to move it right along because I just can't stop loving Yuna. Let's do it.
So, Piero Marzano took down a 35-player RCQ in Germany this past Saturday on the back of Yuna Omni, a mashup of the two archetypes that have both fallen out of favor lately. Let's take a look. Now, I'm pretty excited about this deck. I loved Azorius Omni combo, and then unfortunately we saw Bella's Awakening take a ban this last banning season. So, this looks like a turn 5 slower instead of the turn 4 Azorius combo deck. The 4x of Day of Judgment on the turn, or the 3x Star Cage might be enough to be able to combo off, but I'm not sure this is as reliable as the Azorius version. But with BB Cauldron taking over the meta, I'd like to see more Seam Rips added to this list, but even with that added, a timely Agatha Soul Cauldron will shut down this deck completely. This list needs to see more counter magic added in, starting with at least a playset of No More Lies.
That's fair. That's fair. Now I look at what they're doing here, and it's clever, right? Because you're going into essentially a blue-white control deck that just unas in an Omniscience here and there, and you're able to do that and have Omniscience active, not really on your turn so much, but you're going to have it active on your opponent's turn, so you're going to be able to cast free counter spells and free meringues, and you can just go through your deck at instant speed almost to make sure that you keep them off the board. So this is like a weird evolution of Azorius Control that just grabbed a little combo piece and threw it in. But here's the problem. If they have Agatha Soul Cauldron on the battlefield, how in the hell are we getting Omni through that off of a Yuna?
I don't think you can, unless you have that instant speed removal to deal with that Agathis, or with the Agathis Soul Cauldron. You're kind of left out in the water. Now, I have seen it where maybe you just play a smuggler's surprise, but that's a little bit of secret tech that our team is working on.
Sure, sure. I mean, it's kind of interesting to see all these different builds of Yuna. We've watched, I think, 5 builds within the last 3 weeks, all attempt to find a path through for, you know, the little surprise that is Yuna. But this is probably the closest one I've seen to an Azorius Control build, and in a way, whether it wins or loses, this should tell you about how slanted the meta has become to deal with Izzet Cauldron. But speaking of that slanted meta, let's look at the deck that's being designed to take out Cauldron right now, Golgari Midrange.
Oh, Golgari garbage. I'm kidding. They always try to come back. Now, I'm not trying to shit on the deck, but listen, Lucas G1 GG's made it to the semifinals of Friday's 44-play MTGO Challenge before getting taken out by King Cauldron. So let me dive in and see if I can eat my words a bit. This deck leans on efficient mid-range threats and flexible interaction. The inclusion of underplayed pieces like Elegy, Acolyte, and Ouroboros, which, by the way, what a card, may catch opponents unprepared, especially in formats where faster combo decks dominate. And that card is a beast. If it stays unresolved, there's no way of stopping it. Just the value and momentum that it gains turn after turn after turn, and your creatures getting huge, it's a quick way to death. But compared to other previous Golgari midrange decks, I'm not sure if this can hold up in this meta.
That's fair. And I mean, I look at Ouroboros, and I'll be honest, I played against that card earlier, and I realized it did not have trample, so I'm happy we finally put it in a deck with Mosswood Dread Knight, which does have trample, because chump blocking that thing isn't like, I think it was like an 18-20 at the time, and I was sitting there like, well, that feels a little weird that we can just do that. But you know, I look at this deck in particular, and I see that we only have a few ways to interact with artifacts, enchantments, and even graveyards in the main board. Do we need more interaction on those fronts, or do you think that's going to divert away from the central game plan of this deck?
Oh, how I miss Terra Sunder. I think maybe making room for Pick Your Poison in the sideboard may be something to consider, and a deck like this would love a Tranquil Frillback-esque creature in this deck, but I think Golgari midrange needs to see what future standard sets have to add to it.
That's fair. That's fair. And sometimes you just want to go over the top of everybody, and speaking of that, let's take a look at Jeskai Control.
More control decks. I hate this meta. Herminal MLG got to the top 8 of Sunday's 32-player MTGO challenge with Jeskai Control, highlighting a potential pivot for Azorius Control. Let's consult some star charts. Now, this list looks exciting. I have a few locals who are running this Jeskai Control list with success into top 8 finishes, so I think it's a real contender. But however, the heavy reliance on the Verge lands plus the 3-color setups means you're often a turn slower than the pure Azorius Control list. But I do love the versatile removal suite between Scene Rip, Debt Loss, Scorching Dragonfire, and the sideboard Disdainful Stroke / Devout Decree. This deck seems like it can handle a variety of strategies. And you can play the control game early, dragging the game out with answers, or pivot into the mid-range pressure with threats like Regent and Twin Maw Stormbrood into Elspeth. Pretty sick.
Fair. Now, I've looked at this deck 10 ways to Sunday because I love playing Azorius Control, and I'm like, is the red splash worth it in this scenario? Because we are essentially splashing a third color, completely changing the mana base for 8 removal spells. Is that worth it to you, in your opinion?
I think so. I lost to this deck in a local RCQ to my friend Dallas, and they got me with the Scorching Dragonfires, but they were also running O-Bolts as well. It's really important to exile Vivi. And in this meta, Vivi is the #1 target that you need to get rid of.
That's fair. And with that, we move right along my favorite section every week, Brewer's Corner. I'm going to go ahead and kick things off and tell you all about Bant Birds. So, Adric MTG top-8'd an MTGO challenge with this monstrosity, and I love it. I have not seen Healer's Hawk in a competitive deck, and I couldn't even tell you how long that card's been around. But this build in particular, it's got some really spicy tech to it. Dazzling Denial is like a cracked mana leak in this deck. I love this. I love that they found this tech. It's beautiful. Mockingbird has never felt better as a bird that also gets to be your opponent's best threat. And Cavern of Souls, I mean, have fun with those No More Lies, because we don't give a shit. We're getting this bird right through your window. It's such a clever deck in a lot of ways because it's attacking from a number of angles that the other decks just haven't really messed with. And let's not forget that Bartz and Boko, we actually have a weirdly amazing top end. We have affinity for birds. I never thought we would see, you know, I was around for the original affinity, Ravagers and Platings and all that crap, and I'm like, what are we doing here? But this card actually hits with quite a punch when it gets on the battlefield, so I like what we're trying to do here. I have no idea if this is actually strong enough, but it is a wild idea, and you love to see the ingenuity, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure. But man, another control list? Alright, let me cover 4 color control for y'all. Now, Gershi top forwarded MTGO challenge with this. It definitely feels like standard players as a whole are really experimenting with these different lists. With the Get Lost, No More Lies, 3 Steps Ahead, Lightning Helix, and Inevitable Defeat, I'm pretty sure you have your removal covered for Planeswalkers and any counter magic. Like, I think you're okay, dude. Who hurt you? And also, Final Showdown? What? A commander card? That's crazy. In a late, like, for your late game board, right? While also being able to have your Brewing River region alive. That's pretty interesting. Another thing that I noticed in the sideboard, I love seeing the 2 Sphinxes, Stoic and Forgotten Lore, just to give that additional spice at the end for those grindy matchup. This deck is my worst nightmare as a VV gamer, and I absolutely do not want to see any of y'all playing this at any local RCQs I'm at, alright?
I'm just a sucker for any deck that has mystical teachings. I was there for the Drow New Mirrors back in the day when it was just let's play 27 lands and then we'll figure out who wins. Like I was there for the real times, the old days, the true. I was there for all of it. But speaking of fun and weird experiments, let's take a look at Sultai Tempo. So basically they took the shell of Dimir and said, what if we added green for some very specific cards? And initially I sat there and I'm like, there's no way that these are that effective. And then I started reading Urgent Necropsy over and over and over again and realizing that it can blow up an Agatha's and a Proft's and a Vivi all in one card. Like this might actually be one of the cleverest pieces of tech, and I kind of want to see what other decks this can go into because it lines up so well against the diversification of threats that we're seeing out of Vivi Cauldron to combat all the hate that we keep seeing go up against it. I mean, this is a certified 3-for-1. So I love where this deck's trying to go. I don't know if this is the right shell for Urgent Necropsy. Honest to God, I'd rather see it in something like Golgari Midrange, that Golgari Garbage deck, I think as you called it. But,
that's what it is. Tell me I'm wrong.
But this is still a very clever way to take a traditional Dimir deck and say, okay, we're going to kind of cut out some of that mid-range playing with the Azure Beastbinders. We're going to go a little bit higher on the curve, and we're going to give ourselves, you know, that 3-for-1 with Urgent Necropsy. And a few options with things like Fankeeper's Familiar. It's spicy and it's well thought out.
Speaking of spicy and well thought out, Insidious Roots, my beloved. Let's jump into Gen Roots. Now, this is a deck I really want to see thrive. I am a Roots gamer. I love the deck. R.I.P. Tyvar, forever in our hearts. We'll see you in Pioneer if that ever fucking comes back. But, well, I mean, you have your staples, Molt Tempter, Rubble Bell, Belmer. They're all staples of this deck, and I love to see them here. But the addition of Engineer and FOMO as your finisher to go wide and take extra common steps is pretty interesting. I don't know how often you'll get Delirium, however, due to the fact that you want to be exiling creatures out of your graveyard to make the plant tokens and to go off. It is just really hard to make Roots work at the moment without Tyvar and getting that haste enabled. And I wonder if you can make room for Grease Wrench Goblin instead for that early game threat, being able to cycle through your deck easier, and it fits really well under an Agatha's Soul Cauldron too.
Look, I think, honest to God, the point of this deck is to get your own Soul Cauldron down and to steal their Vivi so that you get the Vivi engine without having to run Izzet. You know what I mean? I think they're just the next level. They're like, I will, our Vivi comrade, our Vivi. You know, like they're just going for it. But that's going to bring us to our final segment, Ahead of the Curve. Now, B, we have looked at 12 archetypes in our recap. What are you playing at RCQs this weekend, week 4 of Edge of Eternities Standard?
Okay, not me being another guest host on State of the Meta talking about BB Cauldron. Okay, but hear me out, Rebels. The RCQM spiking this week. It only has 9 players signed up for it so far, and word on the street is there won't be many BB decks in the room. So that means I'll be sleeving up a fully tuned BB Cauldron list. No fancy mirror tech, no extra spice for control, just pure, streamlined BB degeneracy. The goal, let the deck do what it does best as efficiently as possible. I'm playing the Tursas, I'm playing the Scholars, playing the full play set of BB Ordinatier, and just going to have a little bit extra removal because I feel like I might be seeing some more affordable decks like Mono Red Aggro and Orzav Sack. So I have those Torch Towers and the mainboard Obld and the mainboard Fire Magic to just kind of remove everyone's creatures and be the villain this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it suits you well on this one. And if you're in a small local RCQB, I think you make the right call. Play the strongest deck. And that's what this is right now. This is the strongest deck. And if you're in a local scene, it's rare that people are actually ready for that. You know what I mean? Like, they have their pet decks. They don't necessarily play the meta as tightly.
Yep. People want to get cute, but I'm going to be a little bit cuter with this BB deck.
You know, the cutest thing you can do is get that RCQ invite, right? Got to get that RC invite.
Gotta take it down in the Midwest.
Exactly. And speaking of which, let's see if I can pull this one off. Azorius Control. All right, gang. So this is my own build. This is something that we've been working on within the team. Again, sideboard guides and coffee and grinders. I'll be updating it as I update some of these slots. So let's kind of get into the logic behind this. First and foremost, I kept playing with stock up, and while it is excellent, tapping out on turn 3 can be dangerous as hell. I much prefer these Consult the Star charts where we're able to get some early game value if we just need to impulse to hit that 3rd or 4th land drop, or if we need to kick it late game and grab ourselves a mini memory deluge or a max memory deluge when you get far enough down, right? The other pieces, Overlord of the Mistmores, great against Dimir, terrible against Cauldron. That's why there's 1 copy main. You don't mind seeing the first copy against Cauldron. It can shut the game down fast. But if you see multiples, it's clunky, it's bad, it's not going to do what you want. So you shove the other 2 copies in the sideboard and say, we'll bring you in for Dimir. Similarly, I look at, let's see here, Beza. Everybody's playing Bezas. How much mono red aggro are you actually seeing, guys? Because if all you're seeing is the occasional mono red aggro deck and you're like, Beza's good against Cauldron. No, it's not. They're going to scale past you. They're going to play Profts and Steam Core and run you right over in the sky while your Beza sits there like a big dumb turtle that can't go past Vigilance. So please, just for me to the rest of the world, please quit putting Beza in the main unless you play against enough mono red to justify it. It's not correct. I'm just going to say it.
I'm gonna hope I don't go against you this weekend. Let's pray. I want to see no control. All of y'all stay home. But that's another week, another battlefield. Stick with us and we'll keep you ahead of the curve with our 3rd week of Edge of Eternities in the book.
Last but not least, please like, share, and comment on this video to show support for your competitive community. We appreciate having all of you here, and we will see you again next week.
Until next time, untap, upkeep, resist.